Welcome on to the next edition of Down. My name is Brad Nadalt. We've got the official Comrades Marathon coach, Lindsey Parry, with us once again. Lindsey, you well?
I am very good, thanks, Brad. We are starting to slowly but surely leopard crawl towards the 1st of March. So, still going to be trying to hold people back for a little while longer.
Yeah, you say slowly but surely, but I don't know if it's just me, but the weeks seem to be rolling by so fast. Like this race is looming large and very quickly. And I think for the most part, a lot of people don't feel nearly ready to run this thing yet. But the good news is it's a marathon, as they say, and there's still lots of time. As long as you just keep being consistent, I think is the key. But we are in the middle of qualifying season. It's actually so cool seeing everybody qualifying and hitting goals that they've been chasing, and all the hard work that was done over the festive season paying off. And that was some of the stuff we want to talk about today. We just wanted to sort of reiterate again the importance of making sure that you don't overdo it in the middle of this qualifying season. We're going to touch a little bit on strength training, but we also going to look at these marathons and how to take out the things we need to take out of it and use it in our upcoming long runs, and particularly on Comrades Race Day. So that's all coming up in this episode of the podcast. Lindsey, let's talk just briefly on sort of where we're at now and people who have qualified and the importance of just letting your body recoup a little bit after running a marathon, because I think it's very much a South African thing. You run a marathon, and because you're training for Comrades, people think marathons are just a doddle and you just keep on keeping on and it's like nothing happened. But running a marathon's a big deal, and it physically takes a lot out of you.
Yeah, and look, people who follow us for a long time probably get so tired of hearing this, but 68% of the people who don't finish Comrades started with an injury. And now, having just finished a marathon, you are at your greatest risk of getting injured if you do not give yourself a little bit of time to recover from the marathon. And we've got time. So I think this is an important thing, is that as fast as time feels like it's cruising right now, we have still got time. I made the joke about we're nearly there. The 1st of March is the number we're chasing. That's still 2 and a bit weeks away.
You say you're almost like the dude who's at the bottom of Polly's shorts on the down run saying not far to go now. It's still a long way to go.
Yeah, so we've got a fair amount of time to actual Comrades. And so it's just such a great idea to recover properly now. And I promise you won't lose a jot of fitness if you just make sure you recover from this marathon properly now, and then you get going in proper Comrades training on the 1st of March, and you really just massively reduce your risk of getting injured. Now, one thing that I do want to say, of course, is that part of the panic that sets in when you qualify is that there's obviously euphoria that you qualified, but there's also this overwhelming sense of, I have to do that again, plus a park run. So you kind of feel like there is no way that I'm going to be able to do this again. And you're right, you're not going to be able to run a 4-hour marathon twice in a row. Okay. But you are going to be able to run a 5-hour plus marathon twice in a row by the time we get to Comrades. So also don't get into that trap where you think there's just no ways that I can physically be prepared to run another marathon and then a bit. When you run that marathon on Comrades Day, you are going to run it far, far easier, far, far slower, and you're going to be well better prepared. Okay, so don't let that panic overwhelm you now and then drive you to run more marathons and more long runs. Brad, you were there. I actually wanted to say this last week and then I totally forgot. But we were seconding at Oceans last year when the mummy came walking.
It looked like he attacked the St. John's ambulance man and stolen every single bandage he had in his ambulance.
And he looked at us, made a beeline for us and said, "Oh, I should have listened to you. I did the Cosmos 3-in-1. You told me not to do the Cosmos 3-in-1, 77 Ks in one day." So just don't panic. That's all I want to say is don't panic. Recover from this marathon properly. Get some mental rest, guys. That's like, geez, we haven't spoken about that enough on the series so far, Brad. We have gotten stuck on one or two topics, but we haven't spoken about this kind of mental freshness and keeping it fresh all the way through to Comrades. And this is one of those opportunities. You've just trained for something, you've trained well, you've actually got the goal, you've qualified for Comrades, you put in a big emotional effort on race day. This next 10 days to 2 weeks is also a chance to mentally refresh, physically refresh. And then from the 1st of March until the middle of May, it's pretty full throttle. So use this time, recover mentally, recover physically, avoid getting injured, and that will see you really having a great March and April.
Yeah, Lindsey, let's also just touch, if we can, on the folks who haven't reached the goal. So, and I'm talking specifically for people who haven't qualified. I mean, you're always going to have some people in this phase of running marathons where maybe they were hoping for a sub 4-hour marathon because that was the seeding they were going for, and they ended up running a 4:10 or a 4:20. So they disappointed because they didn't reach their seeding goal. But there is a group of people who were hoping to qualify for Comrades and haven't qualified. So the sort of panic gets ramped up. And we spoke about this early on in January, about that this is like it's a process, and you don't want to qualify before you're ready. But if you've missed your qualification, next week you're not going to be ready. That's like you've got to realize that this opportunity has been missed, this window now. There is another window, possibly 2 to come, but you don't want to try and chase it, because that's when you end up doing more damage.
Yeah, and you absolutely want to stick to that. The kind of rule that I spoke about last week is that minimum 3 to 4 weeks. But in this case, when you've put in like a big effort like that, I would say the minimum is 4 weeks. So you definitely don't want to try again within 3 to 4 weeks. And again, once we start manipulating these things and start talking about, okay, well, what's ideal? Humans are capable of doing amazing things, but what's ideal first? You know, if we have to go and do that crazy thing, we can have a different discussion about that. But the ideal thing is that you recover mentally and physically from this effort, and then it's another 4 weeks. From when you are physically recovered, your next shot at qualifying should be at least 4 weeks after that. So we're typically talking 4 to 6 weeks after that failed attempt. Now, that's for a person who needs to qualify, Brad. For somebody who just didn't meet their goal, that's a totally different discussion. And that takes us back to a discussion we had weeks ago around chasing your seeding pen. And so someone who hasn't met their goal, you are going to do much better at Comrades if you do not race another marathon or ultra. You're going to do much better at Comrades if you just focus on Comrades, train for Comrades. You'll be starting maybe one seeding pen further back than you should have, and it's maybe going to cost you 2 or 3 minutes on race day, but that is very unlikely to cost you the color of the medal that you are going for. But if you try and race another marathon, pick up an injury, or can't train properly, that's got more of a chance of costing you your medal.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lindsey, I don't talk about this enough, but I love the charity seeding batches at Comrades. And I know a lot of the old school Comrades guys don't like it because they feel like you are cheating if you do the charity seeding batch. But if you are dead set on wanting to improve your seeding, particularly if you're in a G and a H, because it's not going to make that much of a difference getting into one seeding batch ahead for the amount of effort you have to put into it, you can raise $6,000 for one of the Comrades charities. I mean, $6,000, if you think it is a lot of money, let's call a spade a spade. It's not like everybody's got $6,000 lying around, but we've all got 50 mates or colleagues or people you know through your parents, like kids at schools, parents, and that sort of stuff. If you got 60 people to give you $100, there's your $6,000, and it's for charity. It's a great cause. Do a bake sale, make cupcakes, sell them. There's lots of ways to do this thing. But if you are dead set about getting closer to the front, the C seeding batch for the charity is a phenomenal way to do it. When you start then talking faster B and A, the amount of time you lose between A and B, unless you're going for like a really super medal, you're losing a matter of seconds. It's not going to make much of a difference the amount of time you lose over the start line. So that's my little soapbox about the charities and the race for charity. And it's also very close to my heart because I was involved in starting that initiative for Comrades. So that's why I'm super, super passionate about it. But Lindsey, let's talk a little bit about why you potentially didn't reach your goal. And I'm going to have a guess at it here, but for a lot of people, they haven't been doing strength training. I sound like a principal here. The reason you didn't pass is because you didn't study. Well, the reason you didn't reach your goal is because probably haven't been doing strength training. So let's just touch on that briefly now as well. And the importance of doing it. But then I want to really simplify this, because we get lots of excuses. I don't have time for it. I can't go to a gym. I don't have a gym membership. The truth of the matter is, you don't need any of that. You don't need a ton of time to have the strength training do a lot for your running. Let's talk about the benefits of doing it, and then talk me through like lowest common denominator, that if someone absolutely hates it, doesn't have the time for it, what can they do to get the best bang for their buck in strength training?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that I don't have to do the real deep dive again, Brad, you can just pop the link to the pod that we did on strength training. So I'll just really summarize it and say that strength training for the down run in particular is so important, because it prepares you for the eccentric load of the last 30 kilometers. But strength training is also important because it helps to fortify you or make you more injury resistant. And it also improves your running performance. And I think that's where Brad is going with this, is that if you are doing your strength training, it's going to give you a greater chance of achieving your goal in both qualifying and in the actual race, Comrades itself. And I think it's always important to say this, and that is that it's never too late to start strength training. So just because you haven't done it yet doesn't mean that you can't. And then really, to Brad's point, I wanted to like super simplify this so that I can really remove all excuses. And there are 4 particular movements that you can do that will have a positive impact on your running. And hopefully, when you feel those benefits, then you might be more motivated to do more strength training.
Let me just unmute myself here. Let me just add something in here, Lindsey. For the folks who are doing strength training, this isn't an excuse for you to cut back on what you have been doing. This is for the people who haven't been doing strength training. So if you are currently doing it, keep on keeping on. You are doing fantastically well. High five. There you go. There's your high five. But for those of you who haven't been doing strength training, this is the important bit. This is what, like, I used to go to school. If I had an exam coming up, I'd like say to the teacher, just tell me the minimum that I have to study to get through. Here's the minimum you have to do to make sure you get the biggest bang for your buck on strength training.
Cool. 4 exercises, and I'm going to turn it into 4.5, just because I know once you're going, you'll be fine to do it. But 4 exercises that, if you really are pressed for time, that are going to make a huge difference to you are a squat, a single leg squat, a step up onto a low step, and then a bridge on your back, where you're effectively lying on your back with your knees bent, and then you pick yourself up so that you make a nice triangle and you focus in on your glutes and on your hamstrings. And then the half exercises that, if you can go to Mr. Price Sports and buy yourself a stretch cord, and you're lying on your side and you just lift your top leg away from your bottom leg. Those exercises will ensure that you are getting stronger and working on the muscles that you need to help protect you from injury, that are going to make you a better runner, and that are going to help you with the eccentric load. So you can start, let me just finish quickly. You can start by doing like 2 sets of 8 to 10 on each leg for all of those exercises, and that will take you 15, maximum 20 minutes, and you can build that up to a point where you're doing 3 sets of 12 to 15 per leg of those exercises, and that's going to take you to half an hour, absolutely maximum. In fact, with that combination of exercises and a little bit of resting between, 20 to 25 minutes max. And if you do that twice a week, it's going to make a big difference to your running, and then hopefully that'll motivate you to actually get more into the strength plans that we've got at Coach Perry.
Yeah, Lindsey, that's exactly what I was going to ask you, is like how many times a week do we need to do it, and how long should it take? What I'm going to do is, we do have a strength training plan that we give away free. It's got slightly more exercises than that in, but those exercises are in that plan as well, and there's a little video showing you exactly how to do it. So if you only do those 4.5 that Lindsey mentioned out of that, you are well on your way to doing better than not doing it. So I'll pop the link into the description of this podcast as well for you to pick up that strength plan. You just click on it in the podcast player you're listening to, or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can click on the link in the description. It'll take you straight through to the page and you can grab it there. Cool. So that's the strength training. Let's talk a little bit about the marathons that have been happening. And obviously we train. When we're training, we do things almost as preparation. We're preparing for Comrades race day to come. And these races are a great way to use that as a learning experience. And whether they go well or not, sometimes when they don't go well, you can learn more. But when they do go well, you can learn a lot as well. And you wanted to talk a little bit about sort of using these marathons as a learning experience.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk as Comrades itself gets closer. We're going to talk about making lists and making sure we don't forget things. And so it's quite important that you make notes of the race, things that worked, things that didn't work, so that you can start refining everything and the things that you use and how you use them as the process goes on. So things like shoes, like when you ran the marathon, how did the shoes feel that you ran in? Were there pressure points? How sore was it? If you've run a marathon in carbon shoes, for example, how sore have your feet gotten? Where has it gotten sore? Is it even worth considering carbon shoes for Comrades? The socks that you used, how many times have you already used them? Were they comfortable? Is it a good brand? Should I get a brand new pair of that now? And then I run in it 2 or 3 times, so it's nicely running, but then I've got my Comrade sock because I know that it works with me, and in particular, it works with this shoe sock combination. Did I get blisters? Where did I blister? Did I chafe? Where did I chafe? And then that starts to give you clues about what to do for the next time. I got really bad sunburn in the middle of my back if you run in a crop top, for example. So then yes, I've really got to put suntan lotion in that spot. But you're going to forget all of these things if you don't write them down. Nutrition, what worked, what didn't work. Now, the relative intensity is going to change from the marathon to the longer races, but you are now giving yourself a really good starting point, and you're creating a list of things that really work for you, that are comfortable for you on race day. If you ran past the water table and saw something, because this is where the human body is like amazing, Brad. You'll run past and see an orange, and it'll be like, you're going to have an orange in a marathon. And then you'll see a banana, and it'll be like, yes, please, I want that. Someone else will have exactly the opposite. My point is, you'll see things that you'll be like, you'll almost crave them. Make that note about that, because that's now something to maybe incorporate into your Comrades race plan if you've got people out on the road supporting you, so that you know there's certain things that you're going to look forward to later on in the race, because you get those cravings. But really, just to simplify it, is just analyze how your race went. So how did I pace myself? Did I go out too hard and blow out? Was my pacing strategy quite good? Did I implement a walk-run strategy? How did that make me feel? How is that different to perhaps other races that I've done in the past? And then, as I said, just really make notes of exactly what equipment you used on the day, exactly where you chafed. Because if you know that, then the next time you do a really long run, you can put Vaseline and or a plaster at that point. If you blister in a specific place on your foot, for example, you can just add a little extra layer of protection there with some elastoplast and a bit of Vaseline or something along those lines. But use the marathon as a real learning experience, and then start putting those lessons into play. And if you don't make those notes, I promise you're going to forget for the next one. Like we get even for a long training run, you get a bit nervous or a bit blasé, and we chuck our stuff out, we stuff it into a bag. But if you've got a list that goes, hang on, the last time that I did this, and I hated that flavor gel, because then you make sure that that's no longer in your repertoire of things that you've got to pull out. If that gel made me gag, or this drink was really horrible, or when I had Coke, it was fizzy and it made me burp and I got indigestion. It helps you just to not make the same mistakes over and over again, because you've got your notes, you go through them before the race, and then you make your tweaks from there.
Yeah, Lindsey, there were two things I wanted to ask. One was around nutrition, and then one is about the actual running performance. And I'll leave the running performance one to last. But around nutrition, you mentioned the relative intensity, and obviously when you are running marathons or less, your intensity is going to be higher than what you would be running at Comrades. And we spoke about that early on in January, I think, with regards to that your race pace on Comrades race day is generally, there's not many races that this happens where it's generally slower than what you've trained at. And nutrition, if you don't get it right on Comrades race day, can ruin your race. I mean, you can get nauseous. I mean, we've seen horrible things happen when people's nutrition is not right. How do you, what's the best way to go about that? And just to explain, I mean, if you're running slower, you technically need less nutrition than if you are running faster because you're burning less calories running slower. And if you've trained at a certain intensity and you know that you take a gel or you take something every 45 minutes, whether it be a gel or a bar or a banana or something like that, whereas the slower you go, you don't need them that often. How do you actually get that right in this scenario? If you're over 50 and want to recover from sessions faster, run pain and injury-free, and improve your endurance, then be sure to join Lindsey and I for our upcoming Faster Beyond 50 Masterclass. In it, we'll show you how we helped a 70-year-old run a 47-minute, 18-second 10K, and how you can take those exact same principles and apply them in your training. Simply scan the QR code that's on screen right now, or click on the link in the description below to save your seat in the training now. We look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, so for me, what I would use the marathon for in terms of that, Brad, is do I like what I'm using? Do I find it easy to get done or not? Because if you find it easy to get done in a marathon, you're going to find it easy to get down in Comrades. So then you kind of have a base strategy for a couple of products that work for you. And then you expand on that and you go, okay, so when I run the marathon, I took 6 gels. Now, if you take 6 gels in the first marathon at Comrades, I do think that you start to feel a little bit queasy. But even if you don't then, you might now be reaching your limit of gels. So where to from there? So that'll be your starting point. You go, okay, I'm not quite at half the intensity of my marathon. Maybe it's 2/3 or something like that. So 6 gels spread over so let's say I'm doing a 4.5 hour marathon, 6 gels spread over 11 hours is not going to be miles off what I need, but it's not going to quite be enough. So, okay, so now in my training runs, what else can I look at using so that I can not feel like I've just had too many gels? And that's where things like bananas, raisins, biltong sticks, packet crisps, Marmite or Bovril sandwiches, peanut butter and honey sandwich, nougat, race fuel, PVM bars, you know, all these different options are available to you that you can then have a little bit of solid stuff along the way to top you up for that other, let's say 30% that you are short of. So step 1 is, what can I take that works for me? Step 2 is, what else can I add to that mix in my long run so that I don't get sick of what I actually know works for me? And then, you know, to your points about getting nauseous, is I do feel like that's often what the problem is because if I'm running 6 minutes a K for a marathon, but then I'm running 7 minutes a K at Comrades, my body's not using stuff in the same way that it was using it then. So some of it starts to sit in the stomach. It doesn't get taken out of the intestines as quickly as it maybe should. You know, Comrades is really hot often. So now I'm even though the intensity isn't quite up there, my sweat rates are maybe still a bit high. So you get a whole lot of factors that come into play. So yes, if we just spread those gels out further, supplement the gels with some solid options or other options, that's the kind of stuff but the starting lesson works with what works for me in general terms. And to be honest, even for marathon racing, that's where I start. So it's the other way around, in that on the easy runs, I'm really just establishing taste. Do I like this, and is it easy to get down? Then I need to do a couple of workouts, maybe a 60-minute or a 90-minute run at around marathon pace, so I can see, okay, I like the taste of this, but when I'm running hard and breathing hard, is it still easy to take in? But now we've got that sorted because we've gone into the marathon. We know it works. We know we like it, but we've got to now adjust for the drop in intensity.
Right, let's talk running performance and some of the lessons we can take out of. I mean, marathons are hard. Let's be honest. If they were easy, everyone would be running them. And there's times in marathons where things don't go according to plan, or you go through bad patches. Looking at your performance, like what sort of stuff would you be looking at from a pacing perspective? Looking at like those dark patches that you go through in a marathon around 30, 32. What lessons can you learn out of pacing? Those little sections that you can then, in your notebook, go, this is what happened, and this is what I'm going to try and do to fix that going forward. Yeah,
so I'm going to start the other way with the positives first, and that's that things that were positive, I would note down. So if you've gone into the race with a run-walk strategy, for example, maybe before you were introduced to Comrades, you had no idea about run-walk strategy. Now you're practicing this run-walk strategy, and suddenly you're like, wow, I've never felt so strong deep into a marathon. I'd be cool. My run-walk strategy works. I don't really need to refine it. Or the other side, and this is more often what happens, is like, geez, between 35 and 42, I found horrendous. Then let's unpack that a little. Did you feel horrendous because your legs were completely anal? Did you feel horrendous because you felt completely flat? Did you feel horrendous because you were nauseous? In hindsight, you were targeting a 4 hour and you went through halfway in 1:53. Oh, wow. Then things like that become obvious. Then it's like, ooh, I went way too hard. And then that's a lesson learned. I have to teach myself to hold back more early. One of the ways that you can force yourself to hold back early is by starting to run walk early. So in that scenario, I wanted to run 4 hours at 1:53. I blew up and I ended up with 4:10 to 4:15. Okay, well, if I'm to run a marathon or even at Comrades, how do I make sure that I don't run too fast in the first 30 kilometers? I put in regular walk breaks. I work out how to do those walk breaks so that I keep my average pace in and around what I need to do it for the first 30 kilometers. Take note of the environmental conditions. Was it way hotter than something that I've run before? Okay, well, next time it's that hot, are there some strategies that I can put in place to keep myself cool, number one? And number two, not just when it's hot, but when I am faced with adverse environmental factors, should I maybe adjust what my goal is for the race? Okay. And then very importantly, and that's going to just lead me into the last point I want to make about how to use this performance, is like, in hindsight, did I set myself the right goal? So was what I was trying to achieve, if I didn't achieve it, was what I was trying to achieve realistic? And that's a very important discussion to have, because it then knocks on into the training. So if you were targeting a 3 hour 30 because you want to run a bull run, and you've run 3 hours 50 and you've unraveled at the end, is some of that unraveling due to mistakes that you made, or quite simply that the goal that you set yourself was not sustainable? So you've paced yourself pretty well through halfway to get that 3:30, but then you've still unraveled. Maybe the goal wasn't right. And so let's make sure that we set the right goal for Comrades. So bull run isn't the right number, but sub 10. If you run a 3:50, sub 10 is still the number. So then let's make sure that training forward, we're actually training on the right plan.
Lindsey, yeah, that is super helpful. I've been sitting here taking notes because obviously I'm running Peninsula Marathon this weekend. And I was sort of just comparing my last marathon, which was Cape Town, and then just sort of planning in my head what to look out for this weekend. And I didn't make those notes after Cape Town, but I remember those kilometers from 32 to about 37. And just thinking back, I obviously and definitely went out slightly too fast and then really struggled that little gap through there. So we're not going to make that same mistake this weekend. But what I am going to ask is, if you are in Cape Town and you're not running the Peninsula Marathon, if you can meet us early in the morning, 5:30 at the stadium, because that's where we're running from, and then blow in the opposite direction towards Simonstown, because we normally run into the southeaster, and this is the first time I'm running Peninsula in ages, and every time I enter the Peninsula, the southeaster just absolutely pumps. So I'm hoping that if we can get enough people to come and blow, it'll blow the southeaster into a northwester, and then that'll blow us to Simonstown. So fingers crossed, Lindsay.
Good luck. I hope you have an awesome run. But one thing that you can take out of Cape Town, which I didn't talk about here, yes, but also that you did come out of that bad patch. And so in a marathon and in an ultra in particular, you can eat your way out of bad patches. So if you are in a really bad hole, you can just do much longer walks than normal. Get to water stations, have a little bit of a rest, fuel up properly, and then you can often start to feel much better and then get back into a strong patch.
Yeah, and it's amazing what the human body can do, Lindsay. I mean, I was not in a good place at Cape Town, and I just decided, you know what, I haven't done all this work to not go under 5 hours, and I just had a serious stern talking to myself, and then just for the last kilometer went as hard as I could, and funnily enough, my last kilometer was my fastest kilometer of the day. So it's amazing what you can do when you actually do have a stern talking to yourself and just go, you know what, stop being such a baby, and go for it. So yeah, hopefully all goes according to plan this weekend. If you are going to be running, I look forward to seeing you out there. And yeah, everybody else who's running marathons this time of the year, good luck. I hope it goes according to plan, and we'll catch up again next week, Monday. Thanks everyone. Lindsay, thank you to you for your time, and we'll catch up on the flip side.